Break your leg right now, today, and within weeks, you'll be walking again. Break it 50,000 years ago, with no doctors, no hospitals, no crutches, surrounded by lions, hyenas, and wolves that can smell weakness from a mile away, and you should be dead within days. That's not opinion. That's basic survival math. No tribe constantly on the move could afford to carry someone who can't run, can't hunt, can't even stand. So when archaeologists dug into the floor of a cave in Iraq and found a skeleton with a broken leg that had fully healed years before the man eventually died, they found something that should not exist. Something that breaks the most basic rule of survival of the fittest. Tonight, we're looking at what actually happened to ancient humans who couldn't keep up. And the answer is not what you've been told. Most people guess the same thing instantly. The tribe leaves the weak behind. A small group constantly chasing food and water simply cannot drag dead weight across the landscape. It sounds logical. It feels like basic biology. Every nature documentary has trained you to believe it. And it is almost completely wrong. Not because ancient life wasn't brutal. It was. Picture it for a second. No permanent shelter. No stored food beyond a few days. A landscape full of animals that see you as dinner. Every single day was a negotiation with death. In that world, survival of the fittest sounds like it should mean only the strong, the fast, the young. But the phrase has been misunderstood for over a century. Fittest never meant strongest, never meant fastest. It meant best adapted. And what made our species so devastatingly well adapted is not what you've been taught to assume. In 1957, archaeologist Ralph Selecki began excavating Shanidar cave in northern Iraq. Inside, he found a Neanderthal skeleton researchers nicknamed Shanidar 1. His right arm had been crushed or amputated just above the elbow, likely as a child. His skull showed a healed blow that left him blind in one eye. Bone growths in his ear canal suggest deafness on one side. His joints were so arthritic that walking would have meant agony with every step. None of these injuries killed him. He carried all of them together for years, possibly decades. Half a century earlier, in France, a similar discovery had already shaken the field. La Chapelle-aux-Saints, 1908. An elderly Neanderthal man, missing nearly every tooth, spine curved and fused from severe arthritis, jaw so damaged he likely couldn't chew solid food at all. A toothless, half-crippled old man in a world with no soft food, no blenders, no mercy. There was only one way that math works in either case. Someone fed him. Someone chewed his food before he ate it. Someone walked beside him and slowed the whole group down year after year. Because leaving him was never the plan. These men are remarkable, but they are not even close to the oldest example. In the country of Georgia, at a site called Dmanisi, researchers found a skull dated to 1.77 million years old. It belonged to Homo erectus, a species that walked the earth long before us, long before language as we understand it, possibly even before fire was fully mastered. The skull had no teeth. Not a few missing. All of them. Lost years before death. The jawbone had reabsorbed and smoothed over completely, something that only happens after a long stretch of healing. A toothless person in the wild cannot chew meat, cannot chew roots, cannot survive alone for more than a few weeks. And yet this person lived for years afterward. Which means someone, nearly 2 million years ago, softened this person's food by hand, every single day, long before any of us would even call that person human. Then there's Ramito II, a skeleton found in Italy, roughly 10,000 years old, belonging to a young man with severe dwarfism. In a hunting society built entirely around speed, endurance, and covering miles of open terrain on foot, his body should have made him a burden from birth. Instead, he was buried with full ceremony, laid to rest beside the rest of his group. With no archaeological sign, he was ever excluded from a single part of daily life. Anthropologists often teach a simple concept to explain exactly why all of this matters. In the wild, a broken leg is almost always a death sentence. You can't run from predators. You can't reach water. You can't hunt. The bone needs roughly 6 weeks just to knit back together. And 6 weeks of total vulnerability usually ends only one way out there.
So when researchers find a skeleton with a femur that broke and then fully healed, it isn't just an interesting medical detail. It's physical proof that somebody else carried that person, fed that person, defended that person from predators through the most dangerous 6 weeks of their entire life. Some anthropologists consider a single healed femur the earliest tangible evidence of civilization itself. Older than tools, older than fire, older than art.
So what actually happened to ancient humans who couldn't keep up? The tribe slowed down. Not occasionally, not as a rare act of charity that got remembered because it was unusual. This pattern shows up again and again, across nearly 2 million years, across multiple human species entirely, long before we were even fully human yet. And it wasn't softness, it was strategy. A group willing to carry its wounded builds something far more valuable than raw speed. It builds trust. If you know your tribe will not abandon you the moment you're hurt, you take bigger risks for that tribe. You hunt the larger, more dangerous animal. You stand your ground instead of running. Care wasn't a luxury our ancestors could barely afford. It may have been the single greatest survival advantage our species ever developed. And the ones who physically couldn't keep up often carried something just as critical to the group: memory, stories, knowledge of which plant heals and which one kills. Value that had nothing to do with how fast someone could run.
Now think about how differently we treat this today. Productivity decides worth. Slowing down feels like failing. Getting sick feels like becoming a burden on everyone around you. Growing old quietly turns into growing invisible. People apologize for needing help. People hide their pain so they don't hold the team back. Hospitals and care homes are often the places we send people once they stop being able to keep pace. Quietly, out of sight, out of the way.
None of that instinct came from how we evolved. We are not descended from the tribes that left their wounded behind in the dirt. Those tribes didn't survive long enough to leave any descendants at all. We are descended specifically and only from the ones who didn't.
One-armed, half-blind Neanderthal lived for decades because somebody refused to leave him behind. A toothless old man in France was fed by hands that were never his own for years near the end of his life. A man 2 million years before written history survived without a single tooth because someone, somewhere, every time it mattered, chose not to leave anyone behind. You weren't doing something extra. You weren't being weak or naive or impractical. You were doing the single oldest, most human thing our species has ever done. We are not alive today because the strong outran the weak. We are alive today, every single one of us, because someone, somewhere, every time it mattered, chose not to leave anyone behind.